Sefer Zmanim Hilchos Shabbat Perek Shleishim, chapter 30. In this perek, we're going to be discussing Kavod Shabbos, honoring Shabbos, and ending Shabbos. Kibud, when we say honoring Shabbos, Be'ikar, that's in preparing for Shabbos. And Oinig is pleasure is on the Shabbos itself. Let's begin. Arba Dvarim Nemnu B'Shabbos. There are four dimensions that are said in regards to observing Shabbos. Shnaim B'Teira, Shnaim B'Divri Sefer. Two are originating in Teira, the Midei Isa, and two are rabbinic. And they are explained by the Nevi'im. Shebet Teira, the two Minatera are Zocher v'Shomer. Teira says, remember the Shabbos and observe the Shabbos. Kibud v'Inuk. The two dimensions explained by the Nevi'im are honoring Shabbos and pleasure in Shabbos. Shenemar, as the Teira says, when Yeshaya says, "Yikaras the Shabbos einik," you call the Shabbos a delight, l'kteis Hashem mechubed, sanctifying unto Hashem and honored. And now the Rambam is going to explain what this means. So we said Midei Isa, there are two, which is Zocher and Shomer, and now we're explaining Idei Nevi'im, which is Kibud and Einik. Ezo Kibud, what is meant by honor? The Shomer Chachamim, Shemitzvah la'adam lechet ponav yodav v'raglo b'chamim ber Shabbos v'bnei kvei Shabbos. U'mis'ate b'tzitzis v'yesha b'kevid reish v'yachal akbalos b'nei Shabbos kamei sheyetz l'gras ha'melech. What does it mean, honor? This is what the Chachamim say. It's a mitzvah for a person to wash his face, his hands, his feet in hot water on Friday in honor of Shabbos. He should wrap himself in tzitzis and sit with respect, waiting to receive the Shabbos as one goes to greet a king. Chachamim of the previous generation would gather the students together on Shabbos, wrap themselves in fine robes, and say, "Come, let us go out and greet Shabbos." Kimel. Shabbos, amongst the ways of honoring his Shabbos is you should wear clean clothing. Should have different clothing, not the same clothing you wear during the week as Shabbos. If a person doesn't have what to change, different garments, should allow his robe to hang so that the clothing does not resemble the clothes he wears during the week. As they're instituted, the people launder their clothes on Thursday, and this is to honor Shabbos. Also, the Kpei Suda Mishtaber Shabbos Mipnei Kvei Shabbos. In honor of Shabbos, it's forbidden to plan a meal, or let's say, drink wine on Friday, to establish like a big meal. It's permissible to eat and drink till night. Nevertheless, a person should refrain from planning a meal from already mid-afternoon and on. So that he should come to Shabbos with an appetite. Halacha hey. Person should prepare his table on Friday, even if he only needs a kazais. Person should prepare his table on Motzei Shabbos, even if he's to partake only the amount equivalent to the size of an olive. A chain so that he shows respect for the Shabbos when he enters and when he departs. The tzarich l'sakim beisim be'yim l'chmin Shabbos. One should prepare one's house while it's still day as an expression for respect for Shabbos. In the dolak v'shulchan aruch mitim gutzas as well. Person should have his lamp burning, table prepared with food to eat, and a couch bedecked with spreads. Shekol ela l'chmei Shabbos, and all these are expressions to honor Shabbos. Well, even if a person feels that he's very important, and he's unaccustomed to going shopping at the marketplace or doing housework, nevertheless, the Rambam says, he has to do things for the Shabbos, to honor Shabbos. This is an expression of his own personal honor. And the Rambam says, Chachamim of the former generation, they themselves would be involved in preparing Shabbos. There was the ones who would chop wood to cook with, one would salt meat, one would braid wicks, and one would kindle the lamps. Some people would go actually and buy food and drink, even though they weren't accustomed to it. And anyone who involves oneself in such activities is praiseworthy. So that's covered. Now that Rambam says in Zion, Inuk. What is meant by delight? So, Shomer Chacham Shetzar L'Sakin Tav Shosham B'Yis Mashkem Avusam Hakei Shabbos. This is what the Chachamim refer to, that a person must prepare a particular dish and pleasant flavored beverage for the Shabbos. However, the Rambam says, but this has to be done based on a personal financial status. Anyone who spends financially in expenses undertaken for the Shabbos, and in an effort in the preparation of many good foods, he's praiseworthy. However, let's say he doesn't have the financial capacity, he can't afford it. Even if merely a person stews food or the like in honor of Shabbos, this is considered a Kved Shabbos, or any Shabbos. However, a person is not obligated to strain oneself or to borrow from others in order to prepare food for Shabbos. The Chacham say, make your Shabbos as a weekday, and do not depend on others. Person who is indulgent and wealthy conducts all his days of Shabbos. He has to ensure that the food that he has on Shabbos is different than Chil. Let's say a person cannot change the quality of the food. Let him change the time he eats. Let's say he usually eats earlier, let him eat later. And if he usually eats later, let him eat earlier. A person is obligated to eat 3 meals of Shabbos. One at night, in the morning, and by mincha. A person has to be very careful in these 3 meals. Should not have anything less than 3 meals. Even a poor person who benefits from tzedakah has to eat the 3 meals. Let's say a person is sick from the food, from eating so much, or he was fasting, So a person, let's say, who is sick, overeating, or one who fasts constantly, he's not obligated to eat 3 sudas. All these 3 meals have to be it has to be established with the wine being served. And a person has to break on 2 full loaves. So on all this. Yud. Eating meat and drinking wine on Shabbos is a form of pleasure for the person, provided that this person can afford it. Also, the Kpeil is Suda al Yayin b'Shabbos v'Yom Tovim b'Shas Beis HaMedrash. Now, on Shabbos and Yom Tov, so even though you drink wine, it's forbidden to be scheduled for the time that Beis HaMedrash is in session. Instead, what was the meaning of the righteous? They would daven Shabbos, Shachris, and Muslim in the shul. The Yovel base he said Sudushniya and come and eat a second meal. But Yedach should go to the law learn. They would learn, listen to Mincha, then they would have a third meal established from the wine. They'd eat and drink till Motzei Shabbos. Halach Yud Aleph. Also, the Adam Yahalach Baba Shabbos is used to Misholish Parasos and Tchilas Hayim. It's forbidden for a person to travel more than 3 parses from the beginning of the day on Friday to Shegia the base of B'Yitayim Rav Yachin L'Suda Shabbos. Why was it adopted? So that a person will arrive home early in the day and prepare a Shabbos meal. Shada ain't Anshik base Yedim Shayim Yavik De Lachin Lei. Today Shegia the base B'Yitayim Rav Yachin L'Suda Shabbos. Shada Anshik base Yedim Shayim Yavik De Lachin Lei. Why was it adopted? So that one will arrive home early in the day and prepare one Shabbos meal. One cannot rely on the members of one's household to prepare for him so that they do not know that one will arrive this day. Needless to say, when one is visiting others, since by arriving unexpectedly, one will be embarrassed. He'll embarrass them. They will not have made the preparation appropriate for hosting a guest. Yid base. Also, the Zanis Velizik Liskanin Lavakish Lachim B'Shabbos. To ruin to fast, to cry out to Hashem, or to offer a supplication of Shabbos. I feel the B'Tzonim Na'atzares, Shatzim Misanam Maslin Alein, Ein Misanam Alein Maslim Shabbos Le'yom Tevim. Even when a community is in distress of circumstances, that would ordinarily require a community to fast and sound the trumpets. We do not fast or sound the trumpets on Shabbos for holidays. Now, except if Goyim, Gentiles surround or flood a city or flooding river, and a ship sinking at sea, you may sound the trumpet on Shabbos to ask for help, offer supplication on their behalf, and ask mercy for them. Halach Yud Gimel. Ein tzarin al hayorish shel hagoyim pachim sheshiyam kedem Shabbos. We do not lay siege to Goyim cities less than 3 days before Shabbos. So the minds of the warriors will become settled and will not be agitated and preoccupied on Shabbos. We don't set sail on the ship less than 3 days before Shabbos, so that one's mind will be settled before the Shabbos and one will not suffer excessive discomfort. With our mitzvah mafle b'yom afil bar Shabbos, the president of the Shabbos. We should enter into an agreement that the ship interrupt its journey on Shabbos. If, however, this agreement is not kept, this doesn't mean anything. L'dvar mitzvah Maflik b'yom afilu b'Rosh Shabbos apesik milishpris v'nishevus. U'mitzer l'tzidin tetzmen afilu dvar rishos mutar lahaflik b'Rosh Shabbos. From Tzer to Sidon, one may set out on a Friday, even if the journey concerns one's personal affairs. Places where it's customary not to set out on a journey on Friday at all, one should refrain from traveling. Yud Dal Tashuv Shamita Ma'inik Shabbasu. Sexual relations are considered a dimension of Shabbos pleasure. Therefore, Talmidei Chacham are healthy, set aside Friday night as the night when they fulfill their obligation. One is allowed to have relations with a virgin on Shabbos. It's not considered creating a wound, nor because of the pain the woman feels. HaShabbos v'Avodah Zarah kol achas m'shtayin shkulu k'neged shar kol ha'mitzvot Torah. Observing Shabbos and the Isra against Avodah Zarah are each equivalent to the observance of all the mitzvahs of the Torah. HaShabbos ya'ish min HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'beineinu leilom. On Shabbos is the internal sign between Hashem and us. Tikach kol eiver Hashem mitzvahs ayu b'chal Yisrael. Whoever transgresses the other mitzvahs is considered as the wicked of Israel. The person who desecrates the Shabbos publicly is like an Avodah Zarah. It's like an idolater. But goyim and everything. So for this reason, the Navi praises and says, "Asher enish yasa zeis when adam yasik ba shemer Shabbos mechalei." The Navi says, "Happy is the man who does the following, and the mortal will hold fast to do, keeps the Shabbos without desecrating it." Whoever keeps Shabbos k'halacha and honors and earning Shabbos, as we just explained in this Perek, from a pushback of Allah Square Beilam Azeh, Yisrael Sachar Tzafel Elam Abba. Navi already explains the reward that is preserved for the world. Receive reward in this world, in addition to the reward that is preserved Elam Abba. Shtamar is designing Hashem, Kafticha Al Bama Sioris, Vachilticha Nachos Yaakov Avicha Kipi Hashem Diber. You will then delight in Hashem. I will cause you to ride on the high places of the earth. I will nourish you with the heritage of Yaakov, your ancestor. Thus has the mouth of Hashem spoken. Brich Rachamon the Sayin, blessed be Hashem, who grants assistance. We've now concluded Hilchos Shabbos. Hilchos Eruvin, Mitzvahs Aseh Achas V'Yimitiv V'Seifrim, V'Eina Min HaMinyan. It contains one positive commandment, Midrabanan. It's not included in the 630 mitzvahs. We're going to now explain the Hilchos Eruvin. In this parak, we're going to discuss the halachas of Eruvin Chatzeris and Shtufei Mevois. And the Rambam is going to elaborate on these two halachas in this chapter. Aleph, Chatzeris B'Shchenim Harbe, a courtyard which has many neighbors. Each one has their own house, but they all share one courtyard. Then so minateda, they can all carry from their house to the courtyard. And we bought them the chutzner, from the house to the chutzner, to the bottom, and from the courtyard to their house. Why? Because the entire courtyard is all one private domain, which one is allowed to carry. For example, if you have a alleyway or a lane that has a pole or a beam positioned above it, they can all carry in there, and they can go from the courtyard to the lane, and from the lane to the chutzner, Why? Because the entire lane is all a Rishus Yochid. The same applies to a city that is surrounded by a wall that is at least 10 tvachim high and has gates that are locked at night. And say Rishus Yochid. And this is Ben Ateda. However, Aval days, we did say from Oslo Shchen Latata Rishus Yochid, Sheyesh Ba Chalukah B'Diyerin. It's forbidden for neighbors to carry within a Rishus that is divided into different dwellings, unless all the inhabitants join together in an area before the commencement of Shabbos. Echad Chatzer, Echad Amav, Echad Amedina. Applies to courtyard lanes in cities. It was instituted by Shlomo Melech and his court. Similarly, people who dwell in tents and booths or encampments that are surrounded by partitions, allowed to carry from tent to tent until they make an eruv. However, a caravan is surrounded their encampments with a partition instead of an eruv. They do not need that eruv. They can go from tent to tent without any eruv. For every, it's considered to be an eruv since it's not a long-lasting dwelling. Why did Shlomo Melech institute this takana? So that people should not make a mistake and say, just as it's permitted to transfer articles from courtyards to the streets or of the city and its marketplace, had to bring articles in from these domains to a courtyard, it's permitted to take these articles from the city to the fields and from the city fields to the city. So they're going to say that they're going to mistakenly have the impression that the marketplace and streets, since they are a public domain, this will lead them to further say that only a courtyard, a Rishus Yochid, and they would think that there is no Isser against the transfer of articles. It's permitted to transfer articles from a private domain to Rishus Rabbim, from Rishus Rabbim to Rishus Yochid. Figure, therefore, thinking should go to Rishus Yochid, should they call it the Yerim, the Echis Kolel, the Hem, the Fnei Atzmei, the Rishus Atzmei, Shalom and the Makim, Rishus Kulon, Viat Kulon, the Shava Beik, and the Chotz the Bot, Shnash Vis and the Makim, Shat Kulon, Shava Beik, Hilo Rishus Rabbim, Rabbim Nashik Makim, Shabbat Kolel, and Ashkenim, Ya Chalek, Latmi, Shubavad, Rishus Yochid, Yosel, Mishus Chalek, Latmi, Rishus Shiat Kulon, Shava Beik. Mishim Mitzim, Rishus Yochid, Rishus Rabbim. So therefore, Shlomo Melech instituted, whenever a private domain is divided into separate dwellings, units, that are considered the private property of the individuals, and the area remains that is joint property of all individuals and share equally, a chutzner with the houses that open into it, the area that is jointly owned is considered a Rishus Rabbim. Similarly, every place that one of the neighbors owns as his private property and treats as an individual holding shall be considered as a private domain. So it's forbidden to transfer an article from a person's private property to an area that is owned jointly, just as it's forbidden to transfer from a private domain to the public domain. Instead, every person should contain his activities within his own property unless an eruv is established, although according to the Torah, the entire area is one Rishus Yochid. What is meant by this eruv? She's over Michael Echad Shemanichel Nisim Erev Shabbos. Ever Shukulano Mu'udom Veichel Echad Chulano. Mekolachim Memeno Chelik Rishus V'Chaveri El Kishim Shiad Kulano Shav Makom Zeh Shenishel Kulano Kach Ad Kulano Shav B'Chol Makom Shokas Kolachad La'atzmi or Kulano Rishus Echas. All individuals are joined together in one collection of food before the commencement of Shabbos. Serves as a declaration that they have all joined together and share food as one. None of them has private property. Instead, just as the jointly owned area is the property of all, so everyone shares the property of this privately owned. By acting this way, this will prevent from making a mistake and thinking that it's permitted to transfer articles between a Shuziyach and a Shuzarabim. Zayin, Erev Jason b'nei Achat Shazem Zeh, Anikra Erev Chatzeres. The Erev that the inhabitants of a courtyard make amongst themselves is referred to as Erev Chatzeres. In other words, the joining of the areas of the courtyard. Jason Ashi Amav Zem Zeh, Rei, Kol b'nei Medina, Anikra Shituf. The joining together the inhabitants of the land or the city is referred to as partnership. Ches, Eim Eruvin b'Chatzeres el Pashtem b'Bovad. An Erev joining together, the inhabitants of a courtyard may not be made with anything other than a whole loaf of bread. Even if a loaf of bread is a saw inside, but it's sliced, you can't use it as a native. If it's whole, even this as small as an iser, can be used as a native. Just as an native may be made using a loaf of bread made from grain, so it may be made with a loaf of bread made of rice and lentils. Now, the loaf of bread we said may be made of millet, a loaf of bread by millet cannot be used. Shitov for a lane or for a city may be made using either bread or other foods. For me, use any food for shitov with an exception of water and salt. Mushrooms and trolls may not be used for shita because they are not considered to be foods. 8 of mayim mela lasik umoris mishtatim bay. If one mixes water and salt, this is considered to be brine and may be used for shita. What quantity of foods is necessary to establish the shita? You can use the chalach of lechem of now. Mavei, medina, which is shmeni sir brachas. So this, shekishmeni also agrees, shishin beits and benis. Filo hoya b'shtatim and Allah from love is so this tikulan. Measure equal to the size of the dried figs for every inhabitant of the lane or the city, provided these are 18 or less. If however there are more than 18 inhabitants, the minimum measure of the shittiv is the amount of food for 2 meals, and the amount equivalent to 18 dried figs, which are equivalent to the measure of 6 medium size. As even if thousands and myriads of people desire to make this shittiv, all that is necessary is the amount sufficient for 2 meals. Kol eichel shenechel g'meshuk begin passing a dog and a bus v'chai b'shtat ben shirim b'zein shtei sudas. Kol shul liftem derech am lafel b'pitik g'nyan mevushol ubas soli b'chem etzamuris b'zeis v'moy shel beitzim shirin g'dei lachel b'shtei sudas. When a shutov is made using any food that is eaten without further cooking, a loaf of bread, certain pieces of grain or raw meat, the minimum measure is 2 meals. The food in question is a side dish, something that people customarily eat together with bread, cooked wine, roasted meat, vinegar, fish brine, olives, and onion heads, and minimum measure the amount sufficient to accompany the meals. Yud Aleph, Shatfu b'yayin chayin, shir shtirivias l'kolan m'chin, shir shtirivias b'yit v'shtayim shtatu min afilu in chayis. M'yim shtayim as a gata chamisha geza, chamisha faskan litil ha'yonik b'lechem shulak. Bashul le'bashul, and Rambam Hilchos Shabbat l'achila. Uchel tomalin, kav tomalim, Habrigeris mana dvelat kaftabuch mishus malais yad vela nach gevei yad chazan litra. Hatadan in bechal yadik marvin ben ali batzalim in Rambam Hilchos ben nas erikol alamen zeres afil bagz mikan abagz mikan enechel. That one klip to name the figure nastam and shuren chal chik yitzum chal even start from the shuren shutav. When fresh wine is used for a shutav, 2 levis are required for every participant. If beer is used, 2 levis. If eggs are used, 2 that may be used, shitav, even when raw. Other measures, 2 pomegranates, 1 esrog, 5 nuts, 5 peaches. A Roman pound of vegetable, whether raw or cooked. If the vegetables are lightly, not thoroughly cooked, they may not be used. An uchla or spices, a kav of dates, a kav of dried figs, a manna or crushed figs, a kav of apples, a handful of cooked, a handful of fresh beans, and a Roman pound of it. Beets are considered vegetables, one may be used as an air. Onion leaves may not be used as an herb unless they're already grown. The length of each leaf is at least that of a sprout hand. If they're not this long, they are not considered to be food. All these types of food are considered to be side dishes. Therefore, they have been given these measures. The same principles apply to other similar situations. All foods can be combined to reach the minimum measure required by shutuf. Uchla chatzedivis. One amor b'chamokim me'ad dinner. V'adinner shish moin. V'ameo. V'amol mishkol shish shish ein. V'asel arba dinner. Arivis machzegos v'namayim min ayayin. V'shol shivos dinner. V'chatzedinner b'kirim. Nimtzalet mishkol chamish shish tish dinner. V'chamishkol tish dinner. Whenever the term Roman pound is mentioned, it refers to 2 full revius. Uchla is half a revius. A mana 100 dinarim. Dinner 6 mo. Mother made of 16 barley, so forth in them. The revius contains an amount of water or wine equivalent to approximately 17 and 1.5 dinarim. Roman pound is equivalent to the weight of 35 dinarim, and the uchla is equal to weight to 8 3/4 dinarim. So we're in B'chomokim Shishas Kabin. Akav Arba Logan, Alog Arba Revius, Quabrandum, this Revius Mishkal Avela and Shilin Jotan Job the Scourge and Tomit. So as mentioned refers to 6 Kabin. A Kav is 4 Logan, and a Log is 4 Revius. Already define the measure and the weight of the revius. These measurements are necessary for a person to remember at all times. All food that is permitted to be eaten, even if the person who uses it is forbidden to partake of it, it be used for an erev or shut. What's implied, a nazir may establish a shit of using wine, and a yid may establish a shit of using truma. Person who takes a vow or an oath not to partake of a particular food, they use it as an erev or shit. It's not fit for one person to partake of it, it's fit for another. I will dover also a cooking in tevel. If the tevel should be safer, I can meiser dich nicht schlecht to mal kriegen. Ich meiser schön wenn ich schlecht to call off in Rambam Hilchos but forbidden food, tevel, even food that is considered tevel only with rabbanon, first truma from which truma was probably taken, or meiser sheni or hektish articles that were not redeemed in the proper manner, may not be used as native. You're allowed to use the mai for an erev shitov, since it's fit to use by the poor. One may use the first meiser after the truma was removed, or the second meiser considered articles that were redeemed, even if the additional fifth of the value was not paid. May use my Sheni Yerushalayim since it's fit to be eaten there, but it may not be used outside the city. Tezayin. Keitzad Ma'orvin B'Chatzeres. How is the Erev joining the entire area of the quarter together established? Given Chalach Hashem and Kol Bayis Bayis Umnichel Akov the Kli Echel Bayis Echel B'Chat Mimbati Achatzer. We collect a complete loaf of bread from every house and place all the loaves in a single container, one in the house of the courtyard. Even a granary, a barn, or a storehouse is acceptable for this purpose. If, however, the Abel in Manustam Beis Hashar or for the Beis Hashar Shali Avad the Basada that impresses Baishim Am is innovative. However, if you put it in like a gatehouse, a sadra, a porch, or a house that's not 4 amas, it's not considered native. What do you say? You say with this Erev, all the inhabitants of the corridor may be permitted to bring objects in and out from the house. A cotton may collect the bread from an area joining the entire area of the corridor together. House in which the Erev is placed does not have to give the loaf of bread. The habits of the courtyard ordinarily place their Erev in one house as an expression of the ways of peace. It's proper that they should not change to another. How is a shituf established for a lane? Work with the of in position to get mutter the form now ladies live the chassidism of Shabbos. So how is shita established? We collect an amount of food equivalent to the size of a dried fig from each and every person, or less if many people are involved. The entire amount is placed in a single container, one of the courtyards or a lane. One of the homes is even acceptable to place in a small home, a sadra, or a porch. However, one leaves the open space, it's not acceptable. If one leaves the container in one of the courtyards, one must leave the container at least a tefach above the ground. And when he makes the bracha and he says, with this Erev, will be permitted for all the inhabitants of this lane to bring objects in and out from the lane of the courtyard, from the courtyard to the lane of Shabbos. Hilchos Eruv, a shituf, Apple Beis Shul by Sechet and Eruv. One divides the Eruv or the shituf, and no, it's no longer effective. If ever one fills a container with the Eruv and there remains some food that one put in the second container, it's acceptable. Should the participant is in a shituf, and they must nevertheless also make an Eruv in their respective courtyards, so that their children may not forget the laws of Eruv. There's a reason that bread is used as a shituf in the lane, and the habits when you're lying it, and they're not required to make an Eruv for the courtyards. So the children will take notice of the bread. A group of people were participating in a feast together. Shabbos came in, they may rely on the bread of the table before them as an Eruv for the courtyard. The desire to rely on the bread as a shituf for lane, they may, even though the dining is a courtyard. Person may establish an Eruv on behalf of others. For example, if one of the inhabitants of a courtyard takes bread and says, "Behold, this is for the inhabitants of the courtyard," or he takes an amount of food equivalent to 2 meals and says, "This is for all the inhabitants of the lane," he does not have to collect food from each other. He must, however, give the proportion to another person who will acquire on behalf. Now, one son or daughter has reached maturity once he receives once wife may take possession. Either a son or a daughter below the age of maturity, nor a county servant or maid servant has the prerogative because they do not have the independent financial A person doesn't have to inform the inhabitants of the lane of the courtyard, but he is granted them permission. As we know, you're allowed to benefit a person without the knowledge. Neither an Eruv nor a shituf may be established on the Shabbos. It may be established before one may, however, establish an Eruv from a courtyard and the shituf from lane beyond it, even though there's a doubt whether that time period is considered to be part of the day or in the night. Is to be found and able to eat by Medesh Mashas. If avalanche fell on it, or got lost, or burnt, or was a truma that became tummy, in a Eruv. Shiner is a Eruv. Suffolk is a Eruv, Suffolk, Eruv kosher. Suffolk, it is considered acceptable. I'll say in a Eruv, a shittim, a mingle, and all love, even that Maftek, and Shmajeka, and after the age of Eruv, Elohim, Kinos, and Mlach, Medesh Mashas, is a Gmisha of an Eruv, Sha'ir Shalafli, even still my Meister. Remember, to Mudilla, this the Allah Shli, Tia too much, Tashach, and Marabisha, and Tebo, Medesh Mashas, Tia Sudar, again. When an Eruv or a shittul was placed in the tower was locked and the key was lost before nightfall. It's possible to remove the Eruv without removing a forbidden labor. Medesh Mashas is considered so it had been lost. Therefore, an Eruv is not acceptable. It's possible to be eaten. Persons have already tumas and mices or tumas and made a stipulation that is not be committed until nightfall. They may not be used for as an Eruv. He says that Medesh Mashas there still tell on the food used for an Eruv must be fit to be eaten before nightfall. Perek Sheni, Hilchos Eruvin. Halacha Aleph. Arshe Chotzer She'ever Kulin Chutz Me'echaman Shli Osir Erev Iman Ben Mezim Meshikech as Israelian was the Chul Eitzim Batem the Chotzer Batem. All the inhabitants of a courtyard, with one exception, have established an Erev. This individual causes carrying to be forbidden. This applies regardless of whether the person failed to join the Erev because of it's forbidden for all the inhabitants to transfer articles from the homes to the courtyard, or from the courtyard to the homes. Should the person who did not join the Erev subordinate the ownership of merely his share to the courtyard, they are permitted to carry from their homes to the courtyards and from their courtyards to their homes. They may not, however, carry to the home of an individual. Based on Rishus, basically, Rishus going to say, then it's started to call Mutam. In Mutam, they should be able. They're Mutam because they made it Erev. Right, based on that, Rishus, the eyes to the city. We got one of them, they should initially Rishus, where you could have to make it in Nasa. He's also permitted to carry because he no longer owns the domain. Therefore, he is considered to be the other's guest, and the presence of the guest does not cause carrying to be forbidden in the courtyard. The person subordinates the property ownership of his property. Basically bittul. Presume that he has subordinated the ownership of his share of the courtyard, but not the ownership of the house. He has to say, a Yerish may subordinate the ownership of his domain even when the guy dies the Shabbos itself. The Yerish has the power to act in place of the person that died in all matters. The Bittul Rishus B'Shabbos is Mutar L'Chatchila. Gimel Bitli Ela Marvin Rishus L'Zeh Shlei Erev. What is our initial Badei? If those who join the Erev subordinate the ownership of the domain to the person that did not join, he is permitted to carry, for he remains the sole owner of the property. I say that they are considered to be his guests because many people cannot become the guest of a single individual. If there are two or more inhabitants who do not participate in the Erev, they subordinate the ownership of the domain to those who participate in the Erev. Those who participate in the Erev are permitted to carry, and those who do not participate are also. Those who participate in the Erev are not able to subordinate the ownership of the domain to the two who do not participate, because each of them causing another to be forbidden to carry. Even if one of those who do not participate subordinates the ownership of his domain to the other person who did not participate, they are still forbidden to carry, since at the time when the others subordinated the ownership of the domain, he was forbidden to carry. There are only two people sharing a courtyard, and one makes an Erev. He may not subordinate the ownership of his domain to the other person who did not join the Erev. However, the person who did not join in the Erev can subordinate the ownership of his domain to the person who made the Erev. Hey, Kshim Shabal Abai Zavatal Shus Balabai Zer Kach B'Chatzar Achas Kach B'Vatam B'Chatzar B'Chatzar. This is a Balabai can subordinate the ownership of his domain to another ownership in a single courtyard. So totally the inhabitants of the courtyard can subordinate the ownership of the domain to the inhabitants of another courtyard. Case that also. After a person has subordinated his domain, the recipient can in turn subordinate to the original owner. How so? If two people are living together in an Erev and neither has made an Erev. If two people are living together in a courtyard and neither has made an Erev, the first may subordinate the ownership of his domain and his friend, so allowing the second friend to carry within the domain that the first subordinated him until he completes after. One may subordinate one's ownership of a room, same manner which is subordinates one's ownership of a courtyard. Person who subordinated the ownership of his domain transfers owner an article to and from the domain that he subordinated. If he did not willingly, that causes others to be forbidden to carry. Shnei Batim, Shtei Sidr Shizram, we keep them noch from Chizur Shabbos in Batim Zazah, Halabi Yeshal Ahem La'ar Ma'amish. Two houses on opposite sides of Rosh Hashanah, and Goyim are surrounded it. The area with the partition of the Shabbos, the owners of the homes may not subordinate the ownership of the domain to each other, because it was impossible to establish an area before the commencement of Shabbos. One of the inhabitants of the courtyard dies and his estate has left someone living elsewhere. It makes me the it makes me should share in Israel. Welcome to Shuk Shmeis when you have Shus Achim in Khatzer. It may be makes in Israel Sharikum Warm. It makes me should Israel much about the Shus Marishalim. When a person lives outside the courtyard but who owns a house within the courtyard dies and leaves his domain to one of the inhabitants of the courtyard, if the owner died before the commencement of the Shabbos, carrying it is forbidden, because all the inhabitants of the courtyard, but this has been native. The owner dies after the commencement of the Shabbos, carrying it is forbidden until the Yiddish subordinates the ownership of the domain that he inherited to others. Yisrael v'geshlim b'mar achas meis haged b'yem af b'shal yitzig Yisrael achar nechosu at shavashim is a massive Eser Shabbat Shadayu Kiyiddish. When a Yid and the Yiddish convert are, this guy is a convert, are dwelling in a cave, and the convert dies before the commencement of the Shabbos. If another Yid takes possession of the convert's property, even if he does not take possession before nightfall, the person who takes possession causes carrying the forbidden until he subordinates the property. The If the ger dies after nightfall, even if another Jew takes possession of his property, does not cause carrying to be forbidden. Instead, the license initially granted continues. You saw during maybe when a Yid dwells together with a goy or their teshim in a courtyard, presence of them does not cause carrying to be forbidden. For a dwelling of an Yid is insignificant. It's like they have the status of an animal. I went to
my I just started.
As the aim, Mesa, sorry. Why there was exactly a skin way the Chomas mostly in the mice should learn. Lama goes we saw the Chomas of family any there Dovimotsi. If them Shami Sach and Dimi again for us the second way the Chomas. Why was such a decree not issued regarding a single guy? Because it's very uncommon for a Yid who will fear that the guy will find an opportunity to be alone together with him and will kill him. The Chama agrees to forbid alone, live alone with the guy. Today, the Chomas Shalom puts out every so last one lay Lukum. But 2 Yid and a guy live except all in a single courtyard, and the Yid in the Stams there. The actions means nothing. The Bitla, the Chomas, the Bitla, and the Bitla Shalom Zelazah. As the Yachar, the Chomas, the Yelachum. They rail walk away the Chum, and Bitla, she's mail mucking with the Chomas. And the Kanala, she's coming and Shuri's a yes, I would come. So let's go to the Chomas, now must choose on the Matan. So often, suffering with the Chomas, I'm sure you said it too. Pink colors and so this coming out the Chomas, Status is a from the zoo. Be Israel, the Chomas, don't name this Israel from Yes. They show you be so with the Chomas, with the Israel from Peninsula, Australia, potentially. Just marriage and English Israel is the Chomas, was a show I'm playing with. It be second the Chomas, if it will be Shabbos, you may enter into a rental agreement with a guy. Shabbos itself. Just middle Shusi, and it says what does the heck move on. A rental agreement is comparable to a subordination of a domain. It's done to make a distinction and not as a hard and fast rental agreement. You're allowed to rent the guy's domain for less than the value of a proton. Each dish like the Chomas must curse like that. Guy's wife, correct that as the mirror without his knowledge. And since Shamash was curse like that, you go around Shlamina. If you like Shamash, he saw the master for that. Somebody called Mazals Magam Lanife. If I was to be shared, in fact, in versus Mask, that I like call Mazals. This skin in my Shawashami, Nashman, Misker, recommend I. We rent out the guy's domain on his behalf without his knowledge. If a guy has many workers, servants, or wives, it's sufficient if one of them rents out his domain for one of them. Case the other way to call Mazals, the Don Bachos Archas, Circle, and call Mazals, Shabbos, Chazer, Achim, Battle, Shusla, Shimon. In the midst of the Cholin, Mazal, Shabbos, Battle, still the Shabbos, Achim, Yamudal, Taltlin. The 2 Yidden and a Goy are living in the same courtyard. Only one of the Yidden rented the Goyish domain on the Shabbos. May subordinate ownership of his domain to the other. This causes carrying to be permitted. If the Goy dies, the Shabbos one Yid may subordinate ownership of his domain to the other. This causes carrying to be permitted. Maybe the Chol Mazolis, she is called the Chol Mazolis. In an issue, Yachal, let's say the Chol Mazolis, the Shenia shares to his most certain was the Chol Mazolis. And that was about English, Rishus, the let's say the Chol Mazolis. I said, I'm going to police it's Emil suffer is filling my mission as a little. When one guy rents his property to another, if it's impossible for the owner to evict the second guy until the conclusion of his rental agreement, he must rent the domain from the second guy if he takes the place of the owner. When a carpet owner can evict the renter whatever he desires, the renter is not present, the Yid are permitted to carry if they rent the property from the original owner. So the basic souls was Erev with Derechlenis, how we him turn lights and bias the bias. Derechlenis, there's an awesome lights and bias the bias, the Psachim and Pnei Gechom. So such she asks, Kishanam Nasim Beit Yochid Makam Beit Gechom Mazalis. When there are several Yidden and a guy living in the same courtyard, and there are windows leading from one Yiddish house to another house, if they've established the Erev by the windows, unless they are permitted to transfer articles from house to house, by the windows the Geisha presence causes them to be forbidden to transfer articles, by the entrances unless they rent from him. For whenever a Geish is present, we do not consider a group of people joined together through an Erev as a single individual. So Shu Machal Shabbos Perek, you have a Yiddish Machal Shabbos Perek, so Yishu Ivid Gechom Mazal, or you can Gechom Mazal is the Chol Dvar, it's like a guy. You can't rent from him, you can't make an Erev, you can't do Vatal. As Sheikh Menek Gechom Mazal, you have to rent from him. Now, because in Shein Erev Abis Gechom Mazal, Machal Shabbos again, like it's still Mitzvah Machal came from Hilchos Shabbat Perek, should ever come Shein Erev. So then in Marvin, if you Shein Erev, in Sheikh Menek if you Shein Erev Gechom Mazal. Al battle or shoes they saw a kosher was after Kanasu. Within the battle, Hinema saw after kosher was at stake, you has a Israel love, Shabbat letters say.